forming a composite score. Now, given data from a variety of sources such as class discussion, daily homework, major reports, quizzes, and final exams, a teacher must combine or weight this data to end up with a single index. Right? So, to combine the raw scores of tests, quizzes, homework, and so on, when they are in different units of measurement, is as meaningless as it is to average temperatures in Celsius and Fahrenheit. All right? So that is to say, the term test, the mark for term test, let's say 80%, is different from an 80% for homework, right? So we have to be what? We have to be cognizant of this here, is that right? All right, so the weightage should reflect both the relative importance of the specific educational objectives and the reliability and validity of the data. Now, this is what certainly partly a subjective determination, all right? So it is kind of subjective. But in general, number two, in general, the final test score should be the most reliable single measures, right? Why? Remember here, okay, the longer a test is, the more reliable, or the higher is the reliability. So same for what? That is to say, let's say here, final mark equal to what? Test 1, test 2, test 3, and so on, homework and presentation, you name it. Okay? However, you see here, this one, say reliability of final mark. This is a reliability of test 1. Well, let me put final mark here. This is what I have the reliability for test 2, reliability test 3, and so on. Now, here, what we are saying for number 2 here, the final test score, okay, the final test score is far more reliable than any one of these. Okay, than any one of these reliability measures. Okay, so that is what this one reflects the scenario here. Here, the longer a test is, the more reliable the more reliable the test becomes. That type of thing. So final mark is far more reliable than any of the constituent marks. All right. So this is an important point. All right. So number 3, students should be informed at the beginning of the course concerning what these different weights are. For example, well, this one is 100%, of course. This one is what, 10%, 20%, 70%, and so on. That type of thing. All right, that type of thing. All right. Now, when what? When combining data, the differences in the variability of the original scores affect the weight. Now, let me give you an example. Okay, let me give you an example. Suppose we wish the class project to count at 1/4, say 25%, midterm a quarter, 25%, and the final 1/2, 50%. Okay, and suppose the range of raw scores on the midterm is 25 to 50. Then what? The range of raw scores on the final 32 to 40. Okay, now you take a look here. Mary and John. So Mary, project 40, midterm 58, highest. Is our highest. Okay, you see here, John, midterm is only 25. Same here, project same. Okay, final. This one was 60 for the lowest. This one is the highest, 80. Highest 80. So the total, and you combine all these three scores, total, Mary, total 162, Tom, 145. All right. So in this example, you see here the midterm is actually more important in determining the final score than the final test. Even though the final test was weighted twice as much. All right. So you see here the variability, in this case here, the variability of the scores have not been, the variabilities of the scores have not been taken into account. Now, a procedure that avoids this problem is to transform all the scores into what? Well, for those of you who have taken statistics, is that standard scores. Standard score. All right. So we have in education, we have standard scores, either Z or T score. Okay. And this one has, well, of course, this one here, normal distribution would mean 0, standard deviation 1. So this one here, nearly normal, would mean what? 50, standard deviation 10. Whoop. Okay. So, and then both what are used by what? By teachers. Okay. Standard scores are used by statisticians. Okay, because 0 is the mean. Negative number means below the mean. Positive number means above the mean. And then the deviation is 1. Therefore, this one is normal, and it's called the what? The standard unit normal distribution. All right, standard unit normal distribution. By unit, this was unit normal distribution. The mean is 0, standard deviation 1. All right. So a procedure to avoid the what? To avoid this problem is to transform all the scores into a standard score or T scores, so that what? we are actually mathematically equate the variances of this set of scores prior to weight, prior to what? Putting weight, or prior to combining. All right? Now, so let us what? Do that. I know a lot of you hate mathematics, but let's say here, assuming the what? The term scores of both the midterm and final range from 35 to 65. Okay, so same range. So we are what? Assuming they have the same range. So therefore, Mary, what? 50, John 50, midterm. This is 65, the highest. This is 35, the lowest. Compare to the previous one, right? So this one is what? 70, the lowest. This 130, the highest. Okay? The final is what? 50%. So you see here, when we add them up here, John had what? A higher total score than what? Than Mary. So this is when we take into consideration the what? The the variance, the variability of the scores, or if you transform them into standard scores, you get the same result. So by doing this here, we are equating, trying to compare two examinees, okay, whose scores are expressed in the same unit of measurement. Okay, all right. So much for number or statistic. Okay, and it is not very difficult to understand for those of you who have a course in statistics. Let's take a look at other methods of reporting. All right. Now, perhaps the major limitation of a single mark is that it does not provide enough specific information to be helpful in diagnosing a student's strengths and weaknesses, or in describing a student's strengths and weaknesses. The feedback to the student's parents and other teachers or prospective employers is just too limited for them to plan diagnostic or remedial help. Okay? So we have other methods of reporting other than just one mark. Okay, let's take a look at them here. Number one here, to provide more detailed checklist or rating scale. Now, the rating scales or checklists should include the major cognitive or psychomotor objectives for each subject matter area. Checklist or rating scales on the affective objectives should also be developed. Now, one inadequately researched question is how detailed a report can be without overwhelming the reader with information overload. Right? So that is important. Is that right? All right. A second method is letters, narrative report. Okay, narrative report. Look at the advantages here. It can emphasize many different aspects of a student's school experiences. physical, social, emotional development along with subject matter achievement can be reported. Okay, so that's what definitely are advantages. But then disadvantages is time consuming for the teacher or the professor to prepare such narrative, such report. And also here, because it is so time consuming, so they are what these letters, this narrative are what likely to be done what inadequately. Okay, so this is the problem. Another problem is that some teachers or even some professors, they do not write very well. Okay, and bad writing damages the reputation of all the teachers. Is that right? So this is very important. So it is important, therefore, for all educators to be able to write reasonably well. Okay. Now, of course, we have conferences. Okay. Teacher-parent conferences. Okay. Of course, here the advantage here is the misunderstanding and miscommunications between home and school can be solved. But then of course here this is the major advantage. There are disadvantages here that typically for high school, primary school, there are 2 conferences per year, but there is of course none for university courses. Okay, the first one here for high school, primary school, the first one is often scheduled too soon before the teacher really knows the child. The second one is scheduled too late to do much good. In general, this is good, but then of course here it is changing. Okay, it is changing. Teachers complain from parents. Okay, teachers do not prepare well enough for the conferences. Okay, another one is that parents may not take the time necessary to have a conference with all 5 or 6 of the child's teachers. Okay, and then some parents do not show up at all. Okay? And then the confrontation. Okay? Parents and teachers are often defensive. Okay, that type of thing. The conferences are often too short, 15 minutes the most, out, next. And the excessive time necessary for adequate preparation and conducting of conferences may keep a teacher from performing other important tasks. So this is true. So researchers have identified all these problems. So let's take a look at another one. Is that another way of reporting marks or to have marks is called self-evaluation. If one is involved in self-directed learning, then Then it's fine. So only for those involved in self-directed learning, it should not be used as a replacement for marking and reporting done by the teacher. One may ask, why? Well, most of the time, and 99% of the time, students are not always very accurate in self-evaluation. Then honest students could be penalized and dishonest ones rewarded. This is the case, right? And most people tend to overestimate their abilities. Okay, most. And but then what? For those who are honest, they will be what? Well, penalized. Right? That's not good. So another one here. Finally, we'll talk about what contract grading. Contract grading. Okay, is where the student, let's say a student and a teacher agree at the beginning of the course on the amount and quality of work necessary for a given grade. This is good. Okay? This is good. You do this, I'll give you this. You do that, I'll give you that. Okay. Now, this may involve self-evaluation of the quality on the part of the student. But that judgment is more likely to be made by the teacher. Okay? So the advantages would be what the participation by the student in establishing the original contract should minimize later complaints about the unfairness of a course grade. Right? So this is the contract set up between what? Between the teacher and the teacher and the student and the teacher. Okay, good. Thank you.